Hey, I'm Necrosis, and today I was thinking of doing a simulation of something I do that may or may not be of interest to others. So let's say you have a scenario where you rent out a VPS server that's running Debian or Ubuntu. You have a shell access to it, and let's say you want a VPN, like a private VPN, but you don't want to buy a VPN service to protect, anonymity or whatever. You can actually install a VPN on that VPS. And in our case, I'm going to do it with Softether server as opposed to just say OpenVPN. And the reason is that Softether is multi-protocol, so we can connect from a Windows machine simply just by installing the Softether client. All you need to remember is the IP address or like the host name of the server, remembering your user details. That's about it. And it also, out of the box, will allow you to export OpenVPN config files that you can then put into an OpenVPN client, whether that's also on Windows or Linux or your phone, such as an Android phone. It also includes IPsec and L2TP and a bunch of other potential things to play with. So it has a lot of features for very little setup involved. Now, I didn't want to use my actual server since that's all running and I don't want to mess with it. So what I did instead is I spun up a virtual machine of Debian 9 and spun up a Windows machine that I will be using as an example client. One thing that's worth mentioning is the VPS I pay for is really weird and running on Debian 7, so it's kind of old and it had a few extra steps, but for the most part it was identical, and I tested it on this. I tested it this way before I even tried it on the server. Now, normally, if you have a VPS, you're not going to have a desktop, so I'm running SSH on it. So it'll simulate the same way that you would access it. So all the work's going to be done in this Windows virtual machine. Now, the first thing we need, I'm going to use Patch My PC, which is a program I love to use for my virtual machines for just quickly getting stuff like my web browser and so on. But in here, it happens to have PuTTY in it, so I'll just grab it from here. All right. Now, the IP address of this server is going to be local. Normally, you'd have an external IP you would connect to over the internet, but in my case, I know it's right here. So it's 192.168.1.167. So this is what you would normally see at home. You just get a shell, basically, and it's all command line. There we go. So I'm connected into it. I'm going to open up my web browser, and first off, let's go to Google. Let me show you which instruction sets I'm using. How to install Softether server on Debian. And then I'm going to use this one by fulltimehosting.net. Props to this Jake. This was posted in, I think, June of 2018. I followed it. It worked. And I don't have to follow it all the way either. I'll show you why afterwards. So we're going to follow his instructions. First, update your server. I don't think there's anything to update. Yeah, see, not there. Wait a minute. Might help if I give myself root access. Okay, there's nothing new to install. The next step was to get all these different things. I'm just copy pasting and hitting yes for all that. Now, in the case of my VPS, it was Debian 7 and the repository was end of life. So I remember having to go through extra steps trying to figure out how to make it work well enough so that I could even, install things. Since I'm using Debian 9 for this test, it don't have to worry about that, but be aware if you're using some weird provider and they're using some old version, then yeah. And these instructions should also work with Ubuntu, but I don't know. I'm using Debian. I would normally be using Windows for everything, but usually when you get a VPS, if they offer Windows, it might be more expensive. If it works, it works. You set it up once and you don't mess with it again. So now the install Git was already included there, so we don't need to worry about that. Now, we have the option of just the regular one or the stable. I've always been a fan of sticking with stable for these types of applications. So this will pull it off of GitHub. That is now done. And we are going to cd into the stable. And then we're just going to do these three commands. /configure make. That'll take a moment. That command is now done. Make install. And now it's done. All we got to do is say VPN server start. And now it's running. What I don't know how to do is to set it to auto start on boot. From here on, I'm not going to worry about their instructions. Their instructions are no longer necessary. And while they will work, the command line stuff from the shell in this instance, it doesn't work with my Debian 7 VPS. So I'm going to bypass all that. Let's go ahead and minimize this. We're on Windows, right? Our server is running Softether. I'm going to type in Softether into Google. I'm going to click download. I'm going to click download Softether VPN. And in this case, we're going to use the server manager. I think the server manager is also available if you get the server, but I'm just going to grab the manager. That's all we need for this. Windows. Yeah, I'll do the installer, why not? And there's the link. I'm going to run the installer. Yes. I want the server manager. So what this is going to allow us to do is actually manage the server remotely that we had just installed, all from the comforts of a window environment with graphics and everything. So this is what the Softether VPN server manager looks like, and I really do like this tool. It's just awesome because I have many of these running on my administration system, and it allows me to centralize everything. So I'm hitting new settings. We're going to call this, I don't know, Debian server. And I'm not going to use a outgoing IP. I'm just going to use the 168.1.167. So I'm just going to use the local IP since we're testing this locally anyways. And I think 443 should be fine. And now it's going to prompt me to create a password. So I'll make a password. The password has been changed. And now we're getting the initial setup. This is where stuff starts to get extra important. We're going to be creating a remote access VPN server. It's not going to be a bridge or anything else. It's going to be fairly straightforward. Do you really want to do this? Yes, I do. So if you wanted to use like L2P or other additional protocols, you could enable them. I'm going to be not using those. There's only two I use, and that's Softether's itself and OpenVPN, which is really easy to export. Disable VPN Azure. I don't need it. It might be useful if you had to open holes and stuff. Now here's where you would initially make your user and potentially set up a local bridge. I'm going to hold off on that for a moment. I'll create a user though. Call it test, and then we'll give it a password. And that's all I'm going to need. I'm going to hit OK. The user's been created. And you can create more users and all that fun stuff. I'm just going to put my window down here so that I don't show off the DNS stuff. But in a nutshell, I would recommend hitting edit config and saving the file somewhere so that you don't lose your dynamic DNS key should you ever need to reinstall it or use it elsewhere. Otherwise, you lose that DNS. You basically have two options normally when you're setting up one of these servers, and that is whether you're going to be using a bridge or a secure NAT. So in the case of the VPS, it's being hosted outside on some other network. We will not be using the bridge. The server I have doesn't even list an adapter, and if you were hosting it in a virtual environment, then you need to make sure you turn on promiscuous mode on your switch. Maybe in a later video I'll explain some of the madness I've gone through with that. Click here, and I'm going to click Manage Virtual Hub. If I wanted to add more users, I would add it here. And a lot of this stuff is stuff you don't need to mess with. But I will click on this. So we need to enable secure NAT. And big thing to just drill into your head, if you're using secure NAT, you're not setting up a local bridge. You do not use the two at the same time. And I think it warns you all over the place about not doing that. Before we hit enable, I'm going to take a look at the configuration for it. So it has this gateway address. So it's going to be doing NAT and DHCP. So I'm going to switch this because I have a local network in that IP range and I don't know what it'll do. So let's do 10.200.10.1. That'll be my range, my secure NAT IP range. We'll go from 10.200.10.50 to 10.200.10.200. So it'll have 150 IPs to distribute via DHCP, which is way more than we would need. And I'm going to change the gateway and DNS to match the IP address here. I've made my adjustments. My IP address, gateway, and DNS server all match. The distribution range is within that subnet. And we don't need to edit static routes or anything. I'm just going to hit OK and enable secure NAT. And it warns you about the dangers of secure NATs, so be aware. Just don't use local bridge. You may not be able to with a VPS anyways. It won't list any adapters. At this point, there's nothing more that we should need to configure. Now all we need is to download the client. So if you were connecting from a Windows machine, you can use just the Softether client. It's the easiest way, and I've had fantastic results. And you can either download the official Softether one like I am now, or you can use VPN Gate, which is basically the same thing, plus an extra plugin that has the VPN Gate servers running. You don't need to run this on the same computer as the server manager if you don't want to. In fact, you don't even need the server manager anymore unless you want to reconfigure something, but I'll keep it open so that I can see stuff. I'm going to hit yes. I'm going to install the client. And I like how it has a tick box, advanced install options for experts. That's install on Windows of this computer entirely. That's my expert option. I'm going to go ahead and hit finish, and I think it already ran itself. It'll have a little tray icon, but you can't see because my stupid window's in the way, but this is what the client looks like. Client only works on Windows, I believe, as far as I know. I'm going to hit add VPN. It's going to say I need a new virtual adapter, virtual network adapter. I'll let it call it whatever it wants. You could have just right-clicked down here as well and selected to make a new adapter. What that's going to do, while that's doing that, I'm going to open up my network thing. This is blocking my view. Change adapter options. So you can see I have a network card, and then it installed this adapter. And since we're not connected to VPN, it's unplugged. Now all I need to do is make a new connection. I'm just going to call it, I don't know, Debian VPN. Now normally you would just put in your server IP here for the host name. So you wouldn't be putting in a local host name here the way I am about to. You would put in your server IP instead. But since I'm running it on my own network right now, I don't want to mess with it. So we're just going to connect to it like this. So all I really need to remember is the IP or host name and maybe the port number depending on what is configured. But you can see already it filled this in. After you put in your host name, this box down here for the hubs will pop up or populate. And if you had multiple hubs instead of just one, you can actually select which one you want. I think we called ourselves test. I think that was my info. And connect. So you can see really fast there it went, but I'm connected now to that server. So if I type in IPconfig, I can see this is the normal network card that has my IP on the local network. And we have 10.200.10.50 DHCP assigned me an address on the VPN's network. So my connection should you can see that there's two gateways. The 10.200. whatever one is a lower metric, so my traffic should be now tunneling through that as opposed to through my normal gateway. Any connection this computer now makes is going to go through the tunnel into the server's gateway and out to the internet. And if the reason I kept the server manager open is that if I was to click manage the hub, I can click manage sessions and I can see that there's a connection from the test user and how long or how much they've transferred and other stuff like that. So it gives you a little bit of things to work with. And there's other stuff that you could look at if you wanted to. Let's do a trace route to Cloudflare's DNS server just to see how it hops. So it went in first hop to the gateway of the VPN, and then it went to my router's gateway. Because I'm connecting from the same network, it's kind of redundant. It doesn't make sense, but basically it works. It was that easy. So what this allows me to do is now I can connect to a VPN hosted on a VPS provider. And if I want to connect into that VPN on a Windows computer, I can just download and install the Softether client. And I just have to remember some of the details and we're good to go. Now, if you want to connect a Linux machine or a phone or something like that, there's other options. The one I use is OpenVPN. So Softether is multi-protocol. And there was like IPsec and L2TP stuff. I've never bothered using it since I don't use it. But by default, it already accepts OpenVPN as well. So what I mean by that is in the server settings, you can actually click on a button down here that says OpenVPN / blah, blah, blah. And all I need to do is click generate a sample configuration file. And I'll just download that to the desktop. So it's already running OpenVPN as well. And I think it's an emulation of the protocol, not exactly the same. But I'm going to extract it to a folder. And so inside that zip file, there's two different OVPN files. And the one that we're going to be using is the one that has the L3 in it. So it's going to be the layer 3 as opposed to layer 2. Layer 2 would be a site-to-site connection that uses, I believe, a tap adapter. And that's outside the scope. But layer 3 is what we would be using. And let's go ahead and give it a shot. Let's connect to that via OpenVPN. So I don't feel like spinning up another Linux machine or something to show you connecting through like Linux Mint or something. So I'm just going to install Secure Point SSL VPN client on this machine instead and use OpenVPN through that. I've also tested it with my phone using OpenVPN Connect, and it was very straightforward. So it's going to be a little difficult to see it because of my stupid face, but I'm going to hit import, and all we need to do is import this into our OpenVPN client. If it was like Linux Mint or something, it may already have OpenVPN protocol ready to go in your network settings. You would just import the file, and we're going to import that layer 3 one that I saved somewhere on the desktop. There's no additional certificates and key files and all those other things that makes me always frustrated when dealing with OpenVPN. So this is a super easy way to just get an OpenVPN type server as well without having to go through all the generation of certificates and all that stuff. But I'm taking the layer 3 one. I'm going to hit open, import. And I'm going to hit connect. And it's asking me for a username. Certificate stuff is still inside that OVPN file. So it might cause issues depending on what kind of OpenVPN client you're using. I don't know. It's always a bit of a mystery when it came to me and OpenVPN, but type in test, which is our username. I'm just going to type in my password. I'm not even going to save that. I hit OK. I look at the log. I got an error. Okay, so I know why it gave me an error. Because I'm already running Softether on the network, it's trying to connect to that one instead of this one. So what we need to do is actually go ahead and remove this. So this shouldn't happen normally. It happened in my case because it's conflicting and it's trying to authenticate with the wrong one. So I'm going to right click this and I'm going to make a quick edit with Notepad. Okay, so I already edited it slightly just so I don't have to share that IP, but this is the configuration for that OVPN file, and down here, by default, it'll put in the DNS entry from the server. So it was connecting to my external IP, except I have a different VPN server that listens on port 1194. And so I'm going to change this. You don't normally need to do this, but I do because otherwise it'll never find it. It's trying to authenticate to the wrong server. Now let's go ahead and import this again. Boom. Let's look at the log while it's doing that. I know it's going to be tiny as hell. Alright, looks much better, and yep, we're connected. I'm going to stress this one last time. In the case of the VPS, we do not use a local bridge. Instead, under the virtual hubs options, we are using a virtual NAT and virtual DHCP server, aka secure NAT. Instead, if I disable this and I don't have anything else, then we can connect to it, but it's not going to, you're not going to have any internet. It's not really going to do much of anything once you're connected. Well, so that's basically it. That's all I wanted to share. It's surprisingly straightforward. The only thing that you would probably want to figure out is how to actually set the server to start on boot. But usually when you have a VPS, that server is going to be running for months or years without ever being rebooted anyways.